This is Bill, who we just met today, and he's going to be filming this so that
Hi, nice to meet you guys.
people who couldn't be here can take advantage of this project as well. This is the third of 4 of these workshops we've done. We started in Old Forge on Thursday night and made our way up to Canton last night. And today we have a double header. From here we're heading to Glens Falls. And it's been really fun so far.
It has. It's been great fun.
We haven't had a chance to talk about last night, but that was great.
Yeah, we had quite a few people and a lot of people that were very interested, which was really nice.
Yeah, and to see younger musicians there was great.
Yes, certainly.
You can pass this around with it.
Certainly.
So how many here are, well, I know you guys are performing musicians. How many others are performing musicians, people who play for other people?
Just for friends.
Just for friends?
That counts.
That counts?
That counts, yeah.
That counts.
Ours was just for family, you know.
Oh, but thank you for sharing it with.
Oh,
One
I'm
big
more than
happy
happy to,
family.
yeah.
One big happy family, that's right. All right, well, let's get started. This is Colleen Cleveland. My name is Dave Ruch. I guess I'm responsible for why we're all here.
It's all his fault.
It's all my fault. Is everybody familiar with an organization called TAWNY up in Canton, New York? TAWNY is an acronym for Traditional Arts in Upstate New York. I've done a number of different music-related projects with them over the years. And last summer, I guess it was, Jill, the executive director there, was writing a grant to the New York State Arts Council. And she asked me if I had any musical projects in mind that I wanted to pursue related to the music of this area. That's what Tawny's really focuses on, is sort of the traditions of the North Country. And so Colleen and her family immediately came to mind. Colleen is 5th generation singer of old songs that have been sung in her family going back 150 or more years. A lot of these songs, the kind of songs, many of which were brought over from the old world when the earlier settlers came, and you heard it as a youngster from someone older in your family, and then you grew up and you sang it to somebody younger, and these songs got passed down through the generations all the way to the 21st century to Colleen, which is pretty rare in my experience that we had in this modern age, that we have living links to this old music that predates the radio, predates recorded music. This is songs that people sang and played for their own entertainment back when people did that sort of thing because they had to. And so, and as you'll hear, you're going to meet Colleen in just a second and hear some of these songs and how the family used them. It's all about storytelling. It's storytelling through music. These are old songs that tell stories, ballads, if you will. Not ballad in the sense of a slow song. Like in the modern area, if you're playing with a country band or something and they say, let's play a ballad, that means let's play something slow, right?
Frank Sinatra sang ballads.
Frank Sinatra sang ballads. These are different kinds of ballads. These are folk ballads, traditional folk songs, songs that tell stories. So she was writing this grant, and I thought, well, what can we do with Colleen's music? It's always bothered me that there's this huge repertoire, hundreds and hundreds of songs that this family has kept alive, but really outside of a very small, I don't want to say insular, but very small group of enthusiasts, people who really focus on traditional ballad singing. There's not a great awareness that this regional local repertoire exists. So I thought one of the good ways perhaps to get these songs out into the world a little more would be to get other musicians singing and playing them for their audiences. So that's kind of the focus of our project. So anyone who's a performer here, we're very glad you're here, and we hope you'll be inspired to pick up a few of these songs and do your own thing with them and sing them for people, play them for people. That's kind of what our project's all about. So without any further ado, this is Colleen Cleveland of Brant Lake, New York.
Yeah, well, thank you all for coming. Yeah, I'm really happy to do this. I grew up with my grandmother in the house, and in the 1960s, with the folk revival, or the folk scare, as some people called it, she was discovered as having this large collection of ballads And she ended up working with folklorists, and I grew up going to Philadelphia Folk Festival, Newport Folk Festival, the National Folk Festival in Washington she was presented at. And but now, I mean, that was 1960 something, that's 50, 60 years ago, and the people who knew of her and knew of the songs she sang are pretty much all gone. So nobody really knows what I've been sitting on for for a number of years. You have a question?
Was your grandmother Sara?
Yes. Yes. All right. See, there's somebody that remembers.
Did you know Sarah? Great.
Sara came here about 40 years ago for a traditional music symposia that was going on through North Country Community College.
I bet that was with the Wards, George Ward and Vaughan Ward.
George and Vaughan Ward, maybe.
They
Yeah.
were part of that.
Yes. Yeah, because the grandma died in 1987, so it must have been just not long before she died that she did. She sang right up until she passed away, and even after having a really massive car accident where we weren't sure she was going to live or not, much less be able to sing again. That was in like 72, I think. And she eventually did come back from it and did a lot of work with George and Vaughan Ward. They took her around to schools and things, and she did storytelling at the Jonesboro Festival and that. So it's good. Thank you for remembering. She was quite a character, actually. And Dave's been listening to some of the recordings of her, and she was quite a force of nature. So I grew up listening to that. She lived with us, and I was the youngest out of 5 kids. So I spent a whole lot of time with my grandmother, and she sang all the time. You know, you sang in the car back and forth because either the radio didn't come in or you didn't like what was on it. So, and she, you know, she grew up learning what her mother learned from her mother. So we know that her maternal family came over from County Antrim, Northern Ireland, in probably the 1840s, and brought this music with them. A lot of very old Irish ballads, you know, a lot of murder ballads. For some reason, my family was really attached to murder ballads.
Who doesn't love a good
Yeah,
murder
yeah.
ballad?
Who doesn't love a good murder, you know? But these were songs that were sung at night when you're sitting around and you don't have a radio, you don't have a TV. You sit around and sing songs and tell stories. Or a lot of the women would sing while they were working. You know, it helps make the time pass and it keeps your mind occupied while you're doing drudgery work. You know, doing dishes and beating carpets and things like that. So that's what I grew up with, and not ever realizing that wasn't what everybody else grew up with until I got much older, and then. After my grandmother died, it was Vaughan Ward who sat me down and said, if you don't carry this on, nobody else is going to. So here I am. And by the time my grandmother wrote down, or started writing down in the 1920s, all the things that her mother knew and her Uncle Bobby knew, and all the neighbors and cousins and relatives, I've got a collection of probably close to 600 songs that she wrote down and notated. And they're everything from these old Irish ballads to Civil War songs to some World War I songs in there, some hymns, American ballads, and some cowboy songs. One of her brothers ended up as a barroom singer in Fort Edward and Hudson Falls because he had ridden the rails and lost a leg in the accident, and that was all he could do was sing. He wasn't much good for laboring anymore, and he would go down to the hobo jungle and talk to the guys riding the rails and pick up songs that were coming in from out west. So that's where some of the cowboy songs in the repertoire come from. So that's what I grew up with, and I'm finding every time I look through this collection of music that she finally in the 60s sat down and typed everything out, and I remember her sitting at the piano picking out the tunes and writing them down on the notations. So that's what I have to work with, plus whatever audio that I have of her, which Dave will play some of it for us. It took me a long time to get my hands on that, I'll tell you.
I bet.
But,
We're glad.
but I finally did. Yeah, there are 16 hours of my grandmother in the Library of Congress. that were taped by a folklorist from University of Pennsylvania. So I have plenty of material to choose from. So what do you want to start
Absolutely.
with?
Love to
what are
hear
we
you
thinking?
sing something. I just had one question came to mind as you were talking about you grew up with your grandmother going to folk festivals, but I imagine before she was discovered as a keeper of these old songs, she probably didn't consider herself a folk singer, right? She just
No, I don't
mean-
think so. It was just that's what she did, you know.
it's just what
That's
she did.
it's just what we did,
normal.
you
Yeah.
know. Yeah,
Normal
yeah,
for-
yeah.
And
Yeah.
she probably didn't resemble modern day folk singers in the sense that she wasn't sitting with a guitar or a banjo.
No,
She sang
Yeah.
unaccompanied.
pretty much. She did play the piano, and she would sing at home with the piano on certain songs, but mostly when she was presented, it was all unaccompanied, traditional Sean Nose Irish ballad style singing. So, you know, and I find that's the easiest for me. I've been trying to add a little instrumentation because modern audiences are not used to listening to a lot of unaccompanied stuff and focusing on it, but a lot of the big old stuff I won't mess with. The really old traditional Irish ballads, I'm not going to try putting anything with those, but the cowboy songs and some of the other things, yeah, I'll add something to those just to help people stay focused on things and to be a little more entertaining.
It can be, yeah. We were talking over the last couple of workshops about sort of modern day audience. Well, why don't you sing something first, and then we'll
All
get
right,
into that.
I don't know, what do you want to start with?
Your call.
My call.
You're in the hot seat.
Yeah, I'm in the hot seat. All right,
Colleen,
well,
do you
I'll
know
go.
any songs?
Yeah, do I know? That's it. How do you make a singer not sing? Ask them if they know a song. I'll start with the first song that I ever remember learning, which is the Woodsman's Alphabet. That my grandmother said, well, she knew her alphabet because she knew the song, and I ended up doing that. She learned that from her uncle Bobby Wiggins, who worked in the logging camps up here in the Saranac Lake region. He worked for Griffin Lumber, and so in the wintertime he worked in the camps up here, and in the summer he drove teams delivering lumber down the Hudson Falls, Fort Edward area. So he was a bachelor, and she was kind of his little pet niece. And she said he would sit her up on his knee and sing her songs. So this is the Woodsman's Alphabet. A is for the X's, I suppose you all know. B is the boys who can use them also. C is for chopping that early begins. And D is for the danger we always are in. E is for the echo that through the woods rings. F is the foreman, his orders he sings. G is the grindstone so swiftly doth turn. And H is for the handle, so smoothly it's worn. So merry, so merry, so merry are we. No one on earth more happy could be. Ride, Derry, ride, Derry, ride, Derry, ride down to the shanty boys' woods, where nothing goes wrong. I is for the iron that marketh the pine. J is the jobber who's never behind. K is the keen edge our X's do keep. And L is for the lice that keep us from sleep. M is for the moss that we stuff in the cracks. N is the needle that mendeth our pants. O is the owl that hoots in the night. And P is for the pine trees, we always fall right. So merry, so merry, so merry are we. No one on earth more happy could be. Ride, Derry, ride, Derry, ride, Derry, ride down to the shanty boys' woods where nothing goes wrong. Now Q, it's for quarreling that we never allow. R is the rivers we run our logs through. S is the sleigh made heavy and strong. And T is for the teams that can yank them along. U is for the uses we put those teams to. V is the valley we run our logs through. W is the woods we leave in the spring. And now you've heard the song that I started to sing. So merry, so merry, so merry are we. No one on earth more happy could be. Ride, derry, ride, derry, ride, derry, ride down to the shanty boys' woods where nothing goes wrong. So that's the Woodsman's alphabet. Somewhere along the lines, we lost X, Y, and Z. I've heard other versions where it's X, Y, and Z sit up on the shelf. If you want any more, you'll have to sing it yourself.
That's great.
Both Colleen and her grandmother report that they knew their ABCs before they arrived at kindergarten for their first day of school
Because we knew the song.
because of that song. And
Exactly.
Beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the things I find so fascinating about these old traditional songs is that they can be sung any number of different ways to any number of different melodies. Colleen emphasizes that the story is mostly the same from version to version, but the presentation of it, the way it sounds, both in melody and sometimes
Lyric too. Yeah.
some of the lyrics, can change widely. I'll play you just a little bit of, I learned that same song from another Adirondack woman named Ermina Pincombe, who I think you guys met when we did that thing in Edwards back in
Yeah.
2009. Ermina sadly passed away about 9 years ago now. But she was born in 1930. She learned that song from her grandmother, who used to sing it unaccompanied. But Ermina was a product of the 1930s, and she came from a family that also played. So her father was a fiddler, her uncle was a banjo player. So she grew up surrounded by not only the old ballads, but also people singing and playing together. And in 1930s, what was the craze on the radio? It was Western music, cowboy songs, right? So she grew up playing this little banjo ukulele, and so by the time she got around to learning her grandmother's version of the Woodsman's alphabet, she had put it to some cowboy chords because that's what sounded good to her. So this is how they sang it in her family, or how she sang it.
There's a right way, a wrong way, and her way.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So I'll just sing you the last part. U is for the use that we put our teams to. V is for the valleys we run our roads through. W's for the woods that we leave in the spring. Now you've heard the song I was going to sing. So X, Y, and Z, these are the last three. No mortals on earth are as happy as we. Hi derry, ho derry, hi derry down. The shanty boy's happy when nothing goes wrong. So merry, so merry, so merry are we. No mortals on earth are as happy as we. Hi derry, ho derry, hi derry down. The shanty boy's happy when nothing goes wrong.
I know a friend of mine who sings that, and she learned it from the Midwest, Minnesota, out there, and the last verse is "Give the shanty boys whiskey and nothing goes wrong."
There you go.
So,
Yeah, right.
so that's about the first song I remember ever singing
Amazing.
and learning. Well, I'm trying to think. My grandmother sang whatever she happened to like, but she a lot of the ballads that she learned from her mother were the ones that she gravitated to, and a lot of the ballads that I find interesting are ones that really not much of anybody else sings. I remember I was telling you last night about going to school, and in first or second grade they'd give you these little primer books of songs and stuff to sing in music class. And one of the songs in it was Lord Randall, which is a very traditional, old Scots, Irish, English ballad. There's versions of it in almost every language in Europe. The French is J'ai un grand mal de cœur, I have a great sickness in my heart. So I learned this song, and then in high school I'm looking at the one in the book and going, that's not how it goes. That's not how we sing it. So I'll sing you that. It's Lord Randall is a child ballad. There was a collector from Yale many years ago who went to Scotland, Ireland, and started collecting all these songs from the old timers that lived over there. And he cataloged them into 5 volumes of songs that he had collected and grouped them up by motif or the storyline. So each of them may have different verses or different words, different tunes, but the basic story stays the same. Lord Randall was fed something by his wife that either she was a very bad cook or she poisoned him. That's what my grandmother said. And there's a ton of different versions of it, but I remember doing this one as a little kid. I think it was the first ballad I ever sang. What had you for your dinner, my bonny bon boy? What had you for your dinner, my comfort and joy? Oh, eels fried in butter, mother, make my bed soon, for I'm sick unto my heart, and I want to lie down. What will you leave your father, my bonny bon boy? What will you leave your father, my comfort and joy? Oh, my house and my lands, mother, make my bed soon, for I'm sick unto my heart, and I want to lie down. What will you leave your brother, my bonny bon boy? What will you leave your brother, my comfort and joy? Oh, my horse and my saddle, mother, make my bed soon, for I'm sick unto my heart, and I want to lie down. What will you leave your mother, my bonny bon boy? What will you leave your mother, my comfort and joy? Ah, the gates to heaven open, mother, make my bed soon, for I'm sick unto my heart, and I want to lie down. What will you leave your wife, my bonny bon boy? What will you leave your wife, my comfort and joy? Oh, the gates to hell wide open, mother, make my bed soon, for I'm sick unto my heart, and I want to lie down. Bonnie Bon Boy. Yeah, I've heard other like Southern Appalachian versions of it where they ended up feeding the snakes to the dog, and the dogs end up dying. And the other one of the verses is, "What color were those snakes?" Well, they was green and yeller, mother, green and yeller.
How do you suppose? What's the origin of a song like that?
God only knows.
Do you ever think about that?
I don't know.
I mean,
It
obviously it goes back
yeah.
a long, long time. But what would inspire someone to put that story together?
It can possibly be a true story. A lot of these old ballads were based on a true story that happened. So, and then they traveled around. People would somebody would murder somebody, and somebody else would make a song about it. Or there was a mining incident, and people made a song. Or people drowned. There was a lot of drowning back then. The lakes of Cool Fin, people, drowned. So it could
Gary's
well,
Rock.
yeah, the Jam on Gary's Rock, yes. It's a very common storyline in a lot of things. And a lot of these old ballads go back to mythology, back to Molly Bawn, goes back to Celtic and Norse mythology, where they thought that women could shapeshift and change into different animals and different things. And there's actually in Molly Bawn, he mistakes her for a swan because she's got her white apron around her. I'll sing you that one because it's got a great tune to it. My family was really attached to music that had big minor sounding, modal sounding tunes with a big wide range. And those are the ones that I'm attracted to. So, but this one is there's a lot of different versions of this one. It's called Molly Bawn, but when it comes to America, it becomes Polly Vaughan. But there again, the story is the same. The man accidentally shoots his sweetheart, and then her ghost comes back and said, well, it really wasn't his fault. Let me think of where to start this. Come all you young hunters who follow the gun, beware of late shooting by the setting of the sun. Jimmy Randall the squire went a-fowling in the dark. He aimed at his true love, and he ne'er missed his mark. Being late in the evening when the shower came on, she ran under a green bush, the shower to shun. With her apron all around her, he took her for a swan. But oh, and alas, wasn't she Molly Bawn? He ran to his home and he threw down his gun, crying, Uncle, dear uncle, I have shot Molly Bawn. I have shot that fair maiden, the pride of my life. It was my intention to make her my wife. Oh, Jimmy, dear Jimmy, to be sure it is grief, but you will not be punished for the loss of Molly. Pray stay you at home till your trial comes on. You will not be banished till I lose all I own. The night before the trial, her ghost did appear, crying, Father, dear Father, Jimmy Randall shall go clear. With my apron all around me, he took me for a swan. But oh, and alas, wasn't I Molly Bawn? Now the girls in old England, they are all very glad that the flower of Killarney was shot and killed dead. If you gathered them together and stand them all in a row, Molly Bawn would shine among them like a mountain of snow. Molly Bawn. And in Gaelic, Bawn means white, so Molly Bawn was would
White.
shine among the white, fair and white.
That's not an easy melody to sing.
I love it.
Man.
Those are the ones that I'm drawn to
I
and
know.
attracted to. I have a hard time listening to some of the modern music that has, 3 notes. It's like, there's all sorts of notes. Use them. Come on. But
Speaking of modern music, we've been talking over the last few nights doing these workshops about this kind of unaccompanied ballad singing and modern attention spans. Any thoughts on that, Colleen?
Well, that's one of the reasons I've been trying to add a little bit of instrumentation to some of the songs. I wouldn't even mess with that song. There's no way I'm going to try to put anything with that song because it stands on its own. But some of the cowboy songs, some of the 1920s kind of things, I've been doing a little guitar, a little bit of auto harp actually works fairly well with it, a little banjo on certain things, just because most people nowadays are so used to hearing music that has some kind of accompaniment with it, and our music now is mostly just background static that we hear in the background all the time, and people aren't used to focusing on what the song is saying to you and the story that it tells. So I've been adding a little bit just to try and break things up a little. So that's my take on that. And the other thing is, if a ballad is sung well, it will grab your attention and hold it. I've heard people who have lovely operatic voices, and they sing a folk ballad, and it just, for some reason, it gets lost in the ozone. They're not invested in the song. They're not feeling it. They're not conveying the story to you. So I think that's part of it too. Is when you listen to a really good ballad singer, everything else falls away. So that's.
Do you guys want to hear a little snippet of Colleen's grandmother singing?
Yes, please do.
It's an interesting. I'll pick Every Rose.
Okay. Yep. And then we'll.
I think you have all probably heard. Let me find a little audio clip here.
Yeah, these songs do kind of filter up into modern music occasionally.
Yeah, occasionally these old ballads end up in Simon and Garfunkel's version of an old ballad, the Cambric Shirt, or Child Ballad number 2.
Yeah, number 2.
Here's a few more ways people have sung the same story in different parts of the world. We're going to hear a clip from Georgia, a clip from Ireland, and a clip from North Carolina. The Georgia clip's great because you actually hear a rooster crowing in the background.
Oh, Della, don't make me Cambric Shirt, save rosemary and thyme. They got that needle of seamstress work, and she shall be a true lover.
Rose, rosemary and fine. It is dear you will me use with a neat bony lass. Will you tell her she'll be a true love of mine?
Will you make me a cambric shirt, parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme, without any needle or seamster's work? Then you shall be a true lover of mine.
Different melodies, same story. Here's a bit of Colleen's grandmother singing their family's version, and then maybe we can get Colleen to sing the whole thing.
As I was a-walking down by the seashore, every rose grows merry in time. I met there a maiden I'd ne'er seen before, and I said, will you be a true lover of mine? If you are to be a true lover of mine, every rose grows merry in time. You must make me a shirt without needle or twine, and then you will be a true lover of mine.
Yeah. I'm taken aback every time I hear her sing.
I bet.
It really, it's like, yeah, I remember that. Well, the story behind this song, and sometimes the songs lose the real story of it, is it's actually the devil who shows up and asks this girl all these impossible tasks so he can take her away. And then she comes back and she asks him all these impossible tasks so that she doesn't have to go with him. There again, the words are different, the tunes are different. The Irish one in there is very similar, I think, to our family
Go
version.
figure, right?
Yeah, surprise, surprise. So this is our family version, and then I'll sing a snippet of one from Larry Older, who was a traditional Adirondack singer, and his cambric shirt was miles and miles different than ours, and anybody else's, I think. Well, let's start in better key. As I was a-walking down by the seashore, every rose grows merry in time. I met there a maiden I'd ne'er seen before, and I said, would she be a true lover of mine? Well, if you are to be a true lover of mine, every rose grows merry in time. You must make me a shirt without needle or twine, and then you will be a true lover of mine. You must wash it in an old dry well. Every rose grows merry in time, where never a drop of water e'er fell. And then you will be a true lover of mine. You must dry it on an old buckthorn. Every rose grows merry in time, that never has blossomed since Adam was born. And then you would be a true lover of mine. You must iron it with an old flat rock. Every rose grows merry in time, one ne'er cold and one ne'er hot, and then you'll be a true lover of mine. Well, you have asked me questions 3. Every rose grows merry in time. Now you must do the same thing for me, and then I would be a true lover of thine. You must buy an acre of dry land. Every rose grows merry in time, between the salt sea and the salt sea strand, and then I will be a true lover of thine. You must plow it with an old cow's horn. Every rose grows merry in time, and sow it all over with one grain of corn, and then I will be a true lover of thine. You must reap it with a sickle of leather. Every rose grows merry in time, and bind it all up with a peacock's feather, and then I would be a true lover of thine. You must stack it up against the wall. Every rose grows merry in time, and pick it all up with a cobbler's awl, and then I will be a true lover of thine. And when you've done and finished your work, every rose grows merry in time. Then come to me and I'll make your damn shirt, and then I will be a true lover of thine. And I can just picture my grandmother going, yeah, then come to me and I'll make your damn shirt. Yeah, she had just the feisty Irish personality to do that. But they used to put her in workshops with Larry Older, who was another Adirondack singer, whose mother came from the logging camps, and he actually worked in the logging camps starting when he was like 14.
And his brothers
driving,
as well.
Yeah, and his brothers as well. So he had a lot of Adirondack lumbering songs and things like that. But his family also carried a lot of these old child ballads and old ballads and songs that came over from England, I believe, with their family. So his version of the Cambric Shirt, and I only know a couple of verses of it, but I need to learn the rest, I guess. Where are you going? I'm a-going to the fair, Flimma-limma-lee, Castle O'Malley. If you see my girl, tell her I'll be there, Timmy Tassilo, Falasilo, Flimma-limma-lassa, Castle O'Malley. Tell her to make me a cambric shirt, Flimma-limma-lee, Castle O'Malley, without one stitch of needlework, Timmy Tassilo, Falasilo, Flimma-limma-lassa, Castle O'Malley. So the story there is the same. Some of his verses are a little bit different. She tells him to harvest it with a feather of some sort. I can't remember. But then
I think quail.
Yeah, I think so. And then to haul it all in with a yoke of mice. So same idea, same all these impossible tasks, and
it's interesting to me. Larry Older was the kind of singer, he was born around just about 5 years after your grandmother,
Yep.
But he always played guitar when he sang these songs. So Colleen has pointed out that especially some of the older, more archaic sounding stuff that came over from Ireland and England, it can be hard to put conventional chords behind because the melodies don't exactly adhere to sort of modern Western music. But Larry Older was a very simple guitar player. So the way he did that song with the guitar was interesting. Like he couldn't find the right chords for part of it. It was like, where are you going? I'm a-going to the fair, Flimma-limma-lee, Castle O'Malley. And he would just stay on the say, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, Tassilo, Falasilo, Flimma-limma-lamma-lamma, O'Malley. Tell her to make it where maybe da 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 da, that would follow the melody better, but you know, it sounds silly to do it that way. So he just stuck with a couple of chords.
It's
great.
It's a fun. It's really a fun tune.
Yeah,
it's
it
got
is. Yeah, it
that
is.
Irish refrain.
Yeah, yes, yeah, a lot of nonsense syllables and things like that. Well, that's where a lot of these older songs, and in my family, because we sang them so much unaccompanied, and my grandmother said she was sitting at the piano one day singing one of these old ballads, and she had been over to her cousin's house, and her cousin was adding all sorts of trills and ornaments and you know, things to it, and her mother heard her singing this, and she says, well, maybe your cousin's songs sound good like that, but if you're gonna sing mine, sing them the right way. When you start, oh yeah, so I think my grandmother came by her personality, honestly. It came with the rest of the mothers and family.
That's great.
So I think that's why a lot of the tunes and things in my family stayed so consistent with what you would have heard in Ireland. A lot of the other Irish tunes and things, people started trying to put piano chords with them or guitar chords, and instead of changing the chords to match the song, they changed the song to match the chords. So you lose some of those minor and modal sounds. So I think that happened a fair amount, but it pretty much stayed true within our family.
That's
Where
great.
else do you want to go from here?
You want to do one of those cowboy songs?
Yeah, let's do that. As I said, my grandmother's brother, Ray, was the one that ended up as a barroom singer. And I remember my father saying when he and his brother were growing up, all they ever wanted to hear was Uncle Ray sing cowboy songs. So So there's a lot of stuff that when my grandmother wrote all these songs down, she eventually would put like on the page who sang it and who she got it from. So there's a lot of them that say Mom and Uncle Bobby, and a lot of them that say Pop, because her father sang too. He didn't sing as much of the old ballads, but he sang like the late 1800s, early 1900s stage Irish kind of songs, you know, the modern, more modern types of songs that we think of as sounding really Irish, where a lot of the old ballads I sing don't necessarily sound Irish, but they really are. But Uncle Ray, or Ray, Dad's Uncle Ray, sang cowboy songs.
Well, it was good that she put all of this added information down.
Yes,
Where would you be
right.
If
I
she had
yes,
a vision where she was thinking.
I'm always fascinated by what she did. You know, here's a woman who had maybe an 8th grade education, not a lot of formal schooling, not a lot of formal music education, but man, she could remember songs and tunes and had the foresight and wherewithal to write all this stuff down. The original manuscript that she wrote down is in the archives in Cooperstown, New York, and then I have parts of mine are actually in Crandall Library. They have an archive there. So some of the original stuff that she did in the -- is in Crandall Library, and I pretty much. We spent a whole day at Kinko one time making copies and trying to so I could stop pawing through and handling all the originals. But this one is Bury Me Out on the Prairie. It's a little different than the Bury Me Not on the Prairie, which is, that one's related to Bury Me Not on the Deep Blue Sea, too. But this was one my father sang. I have no use for the women, a true one may seldom be found. They'll use a man for his money, when it's gone they'll turn him down. They're all alike at the bottom, they're selfish and grasping for all. They stick with the man when he's winning and laugh in his face at his fall. My pal was an honest young puncher, upright and handsome and true, but he turned to a gunman and gambler, on account of a girl named Lou. Oh, quicker and surer his gunplay, till the heart in his body lay dead. When a gambler insulted her picture, he filled him full of lead. All night long mesquite and deep chaparral, and I could not but think of that woman when I saw him pitch and fall. If she'd been the pal that she should have, they might have been raising the sun instead of out there on the prairie to fall to that ranger's gun. Death's slow sting did not trouble, his chances of life were too slim, but where they were putting his body was all that worried him. He raised his head on his elbow. Here we go.
While Colleen's refreshing,
Damn.
I wanted to, something you said just before you started the song, talking about her grandmother making all these notes on the songs. How fortunate are we that her grandmother even decided to write down the songs
Any of them,
themselves?
yeah.
being an oral tradition, you know, how many of these have been lost over the years in other families? It's just remarkable.
Yeah. I have this recurring dream sometimes where I've lost a song.
Oh, what that?
It's like, I know I should know that.
It gets worse as you
He raised his head on his elbow. The blood from his wounds flowed red. He looked at his pals all around him and whispered to him and said, "Bury me out on the prairie where the coyotes can howl my grave. Oh, bury me out on the prairie, but from them my bones please save. Oh, wrap me up in my blanket and bury me deep beneath the ground, then cover me over with boulders of granite, smooth and round." So we buried him out on the prairie, and the coyotes still howl his grave, and his soul is now resting from that unkind cut she gave. And many a similar puncher, as he rides past that wild stone, can recall some similar woman and envies his moldering bones. Bury me out on the grave. Oh, sorry about that. I apologize for the stick in the middle. I did this the other night too. I don't know.
Same song, yeah.
Yeah, it was same song, same just about the same place too. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. It's so sad. Some of these. Who was it? One of the great ballad singers from Scotland, Norman Kennedy, said. He said, you know, he learned a lot of his ballads from the old women who would sit around and sing these sad songs. And he says, you know, they'd sing a sad song and they'd be dabbing their eyes with their apron and go, "Oh, so sad, so sad. Let's sing another one." So I'm going to do something a little bit different. I found this in my grandmother's things, and it may be a song, but I never found a tune to go with it. But a lot of the things they used to do were recitations. People would
Absolutely.
yeah. So and this is very local. It talks about Newcomb and Newcomb Lake. So, and it's very Irish.
Cool.
I believe. I don't even know if you've heard this.
I don't know if I have.
This is a story of Jimmy Dougherty. Well, there's a wake for Jimmy Dougherty in the bunkhouse on Saturday night. Well, the Protestants, they'll be there too. They know he was all right. We're going to keen him till the dawn. You know he came from County Clare, and we'll send the word across the sea to them that's still back there. He froze to death last Saturday night across an o'er the snow that drifted in on Newcomb Lake when the winds began to blow. He'd been down to Newcomb Corners a-drinking hard and fast, and never thought that night would prove to be his last. He made the old bartender roar with some old shanty lie, and he treated all around 3 times, the best that he could buy. He packed a sup of whiskey to bring to us shanty men, and he started out across the lake. The clock had just struck 10. Well, he must have took a drop too much, for he never reached the shore. He walked in circles till the lake looked like a threshing floor. Oh, cold it was and bitter, the gale that blew that night. There was no moon to guide him, nor stars to give their light. We found him the next morning with the dawn light on his brow, his face as white as any saint's and drifted with the snow. We found him kneeling prayerfully, his hands upon his breast, as if he'd bowed to say a prayer or just get a breath of rest. And the drop he carried to warm our shanty's joys, well, he'd never touched it nor drawn the cork. He'd kept that for us boys. Yeah, we're waking Jimmy Dougherty in the bunkhouse Saturday night. We'll keen him till the sun swims up into the broad daylight. There'll be enough for everyone, the boys have been so free. Big Tim Cole, he's coming, and Michael Dougherty. We'll wake him as a man should be who came from the County Clare, and we'll raise a keen that'll maybe stir the old sod back over there. Story of Jimmy Dougherty.
Wow.
I haven't yet found anybody else who's heard this or knows of it.
Unbelievable. Was there any sort of date on it, or
Nope, nothing.
person she got it
Nothing.
from?
No, nothing as to where it came from or who she got it from.
Love that.
But yeah, I figured. I kept thinking, well, maybe I should put a tune to this. And then the more I looked at it, the more I thought, no, it makes a pretty damn good recitation
Sure
on
does.
its own. So we'll do that.
Love to get a copy of that.
I'm just curious. I keep hearing the shanty thing and this like sea shanties. Is that referring to something like logging camps or something? Or what?
A shanty in the logging camps was the building that you stayed in, and it comes from the French, if I remember correctly, where a sea shanty comes from chant, chanteuse or chante in French is singing, but the shanty that they talk about in the logging woods is the shack or the building that you lived in.
It was always a
So-
temporary sort of unit that was built by the
Yeah.
lumber company. Sometimes those jobs you could walk in and out in a day, but if the operation was far enough back in the woods, they would set up these housing units, and the guys would basically stay in there all fall and winter.
Yeah.
And that was one of the main breeding grounds, one of the main places where these kinds of songs would be learned and shared. And depending on how big that logging operation was, some of them were so big that you'd actually have different ethnicities in different corners of the bunkhouse at night sharing their tales and songs and stuff. But mostly it was just a bunch of guys all thrown together and cooped up in the woods for the winter, and you had to make your own entertainment. So it was a really a place where these songs proliferated and got shared.
I remember Larry Older saying that his father was looking for work in the logging camps, and he went to like the local general store and walked in and started singing The Flying Cloud and had any number of offers from the bosses because he could sing and could keep people occupied. So,
Yeah.
if you were a singer or a fiddler or a storyteller, you were a little more valuable because you could keep people entertained.
Absolutely.
You think the wood songs were also sung at work, the way the sea shanties were sung at work to haul on the lines and do that sort of thing, or were the wood songs just more for keeping people occupied at night?
Right. It would
I
make
think so, yeah.
It would make all the sense in the world, especially if you see those old pictures of some of the logging operations, those giant saws with one guy on each
Big
end.
crosscuts,
It would make
yeah.
all the sense in the world that they might sing as they were doing that kind of work just to coordinate, but there's no evidence of that. Very little. The logging songs all seem to have been sung after, and often not until Saturday night, because they worked 6 days a week and you were up before the dawn and you got home after dark and you were dead tired, and it was everything you could do to get your tools cleaned and hang up your sweaty socks and get some food, and then they were out, from a lot of reports. Saturday night was the night they would tend to sit around and entertain each other because Sundays was the day they didn't have to work typically.
Sleep in a little.
But yeah, there doesn't seem to be a great tradition of sort of songs to coordinate labor in that sort of work.
Not that I know of.
Yeah. So what we're going to be doing is at the end of this weekend, possibly as early even as tonight, I'm going to be posting. You all have the handout, I hope. There's a web page for this project, and by the end of this weekend, I'm going to post about 75 of these songs on there. The audio, mostly of Colleen's grandmother, Sarah, singing. A couple of them are going to be Colleen as well, and the lyrics. And then it's going to be up to. It's freely available to everyone to listen to, and then for all the musicians, we encourage you to sort of comb through it and find a song or two that really speaks to you, the story or the music or both, and do your own thing with it. And our grand hope is that you might be inspired to take these songs and sing or play them for other people as a way of keeping them spreading around in the region. And so we're going to actually have, for anyone who can make a little video recording of themselves singing or playing one of the songs, or an audio recording, we're going to put that up on the web page, and we're going to spread it around on YouTube and social media. So we'd love for anybody who wants to get involved to do that, to listen through the stuff and find some things that you want to make your own. That's really at the heart of what the project is about. Does anybody have any questions for Colleen, or questions about what you might do with some of these songs, applying them to what you do as a musician? Or
What was your grandmother's last name, first of all?
Cleveland.
Cleveland.
Her first name was Sarah.
And was your family Scots-Irish? Or?
Yeah, primarily yes. Her mother's family came from County Antrim, and that's where a lot of the big ballads and things came through that side of the family. And her father was from County Cork, so there was a little political tension within the family too. Sometimes the mother's family was Protestant, and her father was Catholic. The family lore is that on St. Patrick's Day, her mother would put an orange ribbon in her hair and send her to her father, just to stir up trouble.
And did she have piano training, or did she just self-taught?
I think self-taught. I don't believe she ever. And so mostly when she played the piano, it was mostly just simple chords, just as underlying background. I got to get some of that to you, because I don't think you've heard that.
I'd love to hear that.
So yeah, it's mostly Scots-Irish on her mother's side. There's been a little bit of thinking that her mother's family were possibly travelers from Scotland, Ireland, because of the stories that they carried and the songs that they carried. Wiggins was apparently an Irish traveler name. And I read a book once where they were talking about the home remedies that the travelers used. They're the same ones my grandmother used on me, that sort of thing. Very similar. Like the kicker was, the old Fellsnap, the soap, the really old harsh stuff. Well, if you grind that up and mix it with sugar, it makes a drawing poultice. And that was in that book as collected from the travelers in Scotland and Ireland, and yeah, that was in my family too. That was
amazing.
That was one of the or bacon. I remember stepping on a nail and having her put bacon on my foot to draw.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Salt pork or bacon. Salt pork or bacon would draw infection.
I tore the bottom of my right foot open on a nail sticking out of a raft as I was diving in to go swimming, and my grandmother packed that thing up and wrapped it, and you wouldn't believe, salt pork.
Yeah.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
She made up this paste and put it on there, and there's a slight scar, but other than that, and I never went to a doctor or anything.
Yeah.
Wow.
Sewed up.
Yeah, I did the same thing.
Amazing.
Stepped on a nail in the chicken house, and here, put this on it. Okay.
I was about five or 6 years old when that happened.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Wow.
that's one of the kickers for me. And a lot of the folklorists are saying that the really big old ballads that came down through my family are very similar to what the Travelers sang.
Are you all familiar with the
concept of
Travelers
Travelers?
We are, because we watch a lot of British TV.
Yeah, exactly.
The wagons that they had pulled.
Yep,
with
caravans,
horses, or
yes.
Single horse sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes teams.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, they come from the Roma. So the tinker was what they used to call them, but that's a derogatory name as far as they are concerned.
Sort of traveling people that had
traveling people.
No
They were itinerant workers. They worked in the berry fields. They worked fishing pearls and the freshwater pearls in the streams of Scotland.
Wow.
Picking that out. And I met a man who was raised in the traveling family. And we got talking about music and, do you know this song and do you know that song? And there's one song that I sing called Beneath the Old Oak Tree, which is a murder ballad. And I very rarely hear other people sing it. And I asked Tommy McCarthy, do you know of it? And he says, is that the one where the worms crawl through her eyes? I said, yeah, that's the one. And he said, I don't sing it. He says, but my grandfather sang it. So here's these two families that are miles and eons apart. And his grandfather sang one of the songs that came from my grandmother's side of the family. So,
Amazing.
it's finding very, very interesting. He said Down by the Tanyard Side was only ever sung by the Travelers,
Ah.
too.
That's one
It was only ever
grandmother
collected.
sang,
Yeah. Yes.
Travelers were among the greatest accordion players.
Mhm.
I-
And pipers, too, actually. There's a number of pipers in them. Yeah. Yeah.
Fascinating.
And storytelling, and Norman Kennedy, that's where he learned a lot of his stuff, was
Yeah.
from Jeannie Robertson, who was...
Norman Kennedy is a wonderful, unaccompanied Scottish singer living in America.
Yeah, he lives in Vermont, I think,
yeah.
still.
Yeah.
Still. I think he's ageless. I don't think he's... he's looked the same for as long as I've known him. But very, very great singer. So yeah, we suspect that we may well have Traveler on that side.
What about your next generation? It's tremendous that you've learned all these songs. Anybody else in your family?
I have a nephew who was singing with me when he was in his teens, but he's moved to Florida and he's in his 30s now, and so he still knows some of the songs, but I don't know that I can convince him to carry on the family thing. So that's why it's so important, I think, for these songs to get out there. There's so much. So many good songs in here, so many songs that I never hear anybody else sing. And those are the ones that I try to focus on, because if I don't, like I said, who else is going to? But it's what she did deserves some recognition and deserves to be carried on, I believe.
Absolutely.
That cowboy song, I like that.
Yeah, yep. There's a couple others. There's one called Utah Carl, which is a pretty common one, and her brother Ray actually brought her this as a poem, and she sat it to music. And that was a common thing for people to do back then.
Yeah.
You'd find a poem and set it to music. I was watching Magnum PI one time, and Higgins on Magnum PI is standing up and he's reciting a poem. And I started reciting the poem with him, and my husband at the time is going, "How do you know this?" I know it as a song, because apparently my grandmother set it to music. I didn't know anybody else knew it.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that amazing?
I marvel at your memory, not only the lyrics, but these complicated melodies that you're recalling. Have you trained your memory? Do you have little tricks, or is this just imprinted?
I think it's imprinted. I think because I started learning this stuff when I was 3 or 4 years old.
Yeah.
And my father was the same way. Who was at Vaughan called us tune sponges.
Tune sponges.
A tune sponge. I think it comes from just doing it.
So you heard these all the time then?
Pretty much, yeah. Up until I was early teens, and then my grandmother had a very bad car accident, and the family kind of fell apart. So it wasn't until just before she died in 1987 that I kind of got back into it. And then they were dedicating a book to my grandmother at the Washington County Fair. And Vaughn Ward called my father before he had had coffee in the morning and asked him, "Can you come sing some songs?" And he said, "Well, yeah, I can do that." And the next phone call was to me saying, "You know these, you got to come and do it too."
Okay.
And that's how both my father and I got started performing. We got nudged by the folklorists who had worked with my grandmother.
Well, in those years up to your teen period, how many songs did you hear in a typical day, you guess?
Probably 2 or 3 anyway.
2 or 3 a day?
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, a lot of it is just by osmosis. It wasn't that you sat down and specifically learned a song. I've done that more, as an adult now. I remember singing Queen Jane when I was 7 or 8.
Wow.
I had no idea what the song was about. It's an incest ballad. I didn't know what it was about, but I could sing the song when I was, a little kid. But
because it was around you all the time.
Yes, that's what I heard. It was that kind of thing. And
Now you're saying the loggers sang at night. When did your family sing?
my grandmother would sing all the time, all day long when she's working. A lot in the car, back and forth. You were driving in the car.
She had to be jolly. She had to be a jolly person.
Yeah, for the most part, yeah. Yeah, that's typical Irish. It'd be up and down. But, but for the most part, yes, what I remember of her. So yeah, you heard it all the time. And my father was the same way. He didn't very often sing out loud until after my grandmother died. but you'd hear him humming stuff or like
interesting.
whistling stuff under his breath. I mean, you could get him to sing if you gave him a couple of snorts of bourbon, you know. But he was very shy. He wouldn't sing much until you loosened him up a bit. And he was an excellent singer.
Yeah.
He was a very
sure
good
was.
singer. And he knew them all. He just didn't really put himself out there until after she died.
Joy juice.
Sure.
Yeah, a little bit of that. Yeah, loosen his tongue.
In terms of the learning of the songs, there does seem to have been a greater capacity for people to do that back in these days when these songs were a little more common. I don't know if that's because, you know, I think you could attribute it to a number of different things, but you know, there's guys who would say, and women who would say, you know, the folklorist is interviewing the singer and saying, you know, where did you hear that song? Oh, I learned it from a Frenchman who came into the logging camp one day. So how many times did you have to hear it? Oh, just once. You know, it's like you picked up 7 verses by hearing it once.
Yep. My father did that. He popped out with a song that none of us had ever heard on stage one time because Daddy Dick Richard had told a joke about a sailor.
Okay.
And my father opens his mouth and comes out with this song that, come to find out, he had learned many years ago in a bar room with a guy he was working with on the Plattsburgh missile bases. You know, go figure. And I can remember. And it was just a snippet of a song that we were all flabbergasted. He came out with 15 men on the dead man's chest. Yo ho ho, and a bottle of rum. Drink and the devil had done for the rest. Yo ho ho, and a bottle of rum. The captain lay with his head in gore. The scullion's axe his head had shore. And the scullion he was stabbed times 4. Yo ho ho, and a bottle of rum. 'Twas a cutlass swipe or an ounce of lead, or a gaping hole in a battered head, and the scupper's glut all running red. Yo ho ho, and a bottle of rum. A maiden lay in her cabin cot, her shift stiff dried with a purplish rot. Oh, was she wench or was she jade? Or was she but a shuddering maid? She bore the knife and she took the blade. Yo ho ho, and a bottle of rum. So we wrapped them all in a mainsail tight, with twice 10 turns of a hawser's bite, and we heaved them over and out of sight, with a yo-heave-ho and a fare-ye-well, a solemn plunge in a sodden swell, 10 fathoms down on the road to hell. Yo ho ho, and a bottle of rum. Which my mother had never heard him sing that. They'd been married 50-some years. And we got looking it up, and it's actually called The Derelict is the name of the tune. And there's more to it, but from one night in a bar listening to one of his buddies sing,
Unbelievable.
years later he pops out with that. I think a lot of years ago there wasn't as much to distract you.
Right.
I mean, people did
I'd like to think that.
recitations.
Yeah.
People did recitations. They sang songs. They did poetry because they weren't bombarded by all this other stuff. I think that's part of
Horseshoes, a radio, and a guitar.
Yeah,
Sure.
very much. Yeah.
And if you think of it in the sense that this was going to be your future entertainment, you didn't have a TV. Well, I don't need to learn that song because I can be entertained any number of other ways.
Or I can find it on the internet.
Or I can find it on the internet, or I can push a button and turn the radio on. Before any of that was available, you know, you were probably a little more invested in committing some things to memory because this was your future entertainment. You know. Any other questions about Colleen or about the project before we wrap up?
I know one thing, going back to the Travelers. A lot of people won't realize this, but
from the travelers became the caravans, and the caravans are to our RV industry today.
Yeah, yeah. The travelers now live in RVs. A lot of them don't have the
Oh,
ornate
amazing.
wagons, the horse-drawn stuff. Although they are still very vested in the horse industry.
Okay.
Travelers were
Makes sense.
horsemen.
Oh, yeah.
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 We see it all the time in a lot of the TV that we watch.
Yes, yeah.
We watch a lot of Irish documentaries.
I do the same thing. Yeah, I do the same thing.
But and the Amish.
Yeah.
You know, God bless the Amish.
Yeah.
Because they have that lifestyle
Yeah.
that is long gone with us.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They know how to drive a team.
And there were certainly, I mean, I remember an interview I listened to in the Tawny archives. There was a guy named Vic Palmerville who lived in St. Lawrence County over by Star Lake, but kind of down off the beaten path. And he remembered, he was still alive in the 1980s. He remembered as a kid gypsies coming through
Oh, yeah.
that area.
Yeah. My parents said too, Hudson Falls too.
Yeah.
You know, they'd camp out. There'd be encampments of gypsies at certain time of the
Yeah.
year, even Hudson Falls, Fort Edward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He also had bobcats and black panthers and stuff.
Yeah.
In his memory.
Well, yeah.
Still do out there.
Yeah.
Well, great. Thank you to Blue Seed Studio for hosting this. They were very generous and just offered this space for us to do this in. And thank you all for being here. Thanks to Colleen for
Thank you
making
for
the
asking
trip
me.
and providing the subject matter for all of
Yeah.
this. And I have everyone's email address, so like I said, by the end of the weekend, I'll send you an email with a link to where you can find dozens and dozens of these songs, and we'll keep in touch from there, and would love to hear anything that you all end up doing with them.
Be interesting.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
I mean, these have even, I know we don't necessarily have any rock and roll musicians here today, but this video is also going to be shown to people who weren't able to make any of the live events. I mean, Led Zeppelin, if you can imagine such a thing, the British rock group, took an old ballad, a British ballad called The Gallows Pole, and did this with it. So,
Yeah.
So we're gonna.
But it is.
We're gonna appear with
The
a rock and
story is
roll
the
band
same, yeah.
next time.
Yeah. It is. It is.
The Grateful
It is.
Dead did an old Scottish ballad, Peggy-O.
Sweet road out to Rio. As we rode out to Veneria, our captain fell in love with a lady like a dove, and he called her by name, pretty Peggy-O. Will you marry me, pretty Peggy-O? Will you marry me, pretty Peggy-O? If you will marry me, I'll set your cities free, and free all the ladies in the area.
So there are. Sorry?
No, nothing. I was just clearing my throat. That's
I was
all.
just going to say there are now tens of thousands of Grateful Dead fans who know that song and think it's a Grateful Dead song because they don't know where it came from necessarily, you know? So lots of different things we can do with these songs. Sorry?
400 or 600-year-old song or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably
Oh, yeah.
at least
Very,
4.
yeah.
The last
Yeah,
of 5EO, I think it
Yeah.
was.
Yes. The last of 5EO.
Yeah.
Yep.
While we got the group here, I heard that reference to Amish. I'm working on a building right now with some Amish carpenters, and I've only been working with them for 3 days. And they only did it when I got off in the distance, but they started to sing.
Oh.
And I was far enough away, I couldn't tell if it was German or English, but I'm wondering if anybody knows what do Amish sing? It's kind of And these are traditional Amish. These are the ones that won't even put the orange triangle on the back of their carriage.
Okay.
So I'm pretty confident this is not popular music.
There's a
they're singing.
project.
Wow.
There's a project.
Do you have a recorder on your phone?
Well, I don't want to be mean. It's tricky to,
have to
I
ask,
want to be respectful, but I'm going to eventually ask them. But I'm curious if anyone here knows what Amish would sing on.
I don't.
I would expect hymns of some sort, but
That's what I thought.
I don't know if there would be something else.
Ballads.
Yeah.
It did not sound like hymns. It sounded more like ballads.
Okay.
I would love to
That's
know.
interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting.
I'll try to find out. I'll let you know if I learn anything
Please.
interesting.
Yeah, please
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
Yeah, that's.
But no one's ever run across that or recorded that or asked?
I'm sure there's probably been folklorists who have recorded that. I've never seen any of that stuff, but I would have to think that exists. That there's some documentation of what the Amish
They
say.
do a lot of singing when they're building things. There's on YouTube actually, there's some pretty good Amish stuff. And I was watching one not too long ago where a barn had burned down, and they came in one weekend, they built a whole new barn, and they're singing all the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're working and
Very
singing.
interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. That's the other thing about these unaccompanied ballads is you can do stuff and sing at the same time, you know. I used to paint houses for a living, and I'd be up on the top of the ladder painting away, singing my heart out, you know, until somebody came around the corner and said, "Is that you?" Yeah.
Remind me to never become a painter, huh?
Yeah.
This is what happened.
Yeah. Do we want to do
Do you
one?
feel like doing the hen house?
I can either do the hen house or the dying drummer's sweetheart. Both
Do
of those are.
whichever one you
Let's
like.
do the dying drummer's sweetheart, because that's certainly a local tune. It names a whole lot of local towns, and a drummer was somebody who went from town to town, selling things. So he apparently had a girl in every town. A gay and handsome traveling man lay on a bed of pain. His life was all hope was gone. I've lost it now. I sang it last night. What the heck? A gay and handsome traveling man lay on a bed of pain. All hope was past, his life ebbed fast. He ne'er would rise again. Have you a sweetheart, fair and true? They whispered o'er his bed, whom you would tell a last farewell. The young man softly said, "There's Daisy back in Warrensburg and Bess in Sandy Hill. There's Millie down in Albany, Kate's in Mechanicville. There's darlin' Jess in good old Ty, and Mary's up in Jay. And write to Sue in Rutland too, or hell will be to pay." The watchers stared in wild surprise, and then they said once more, "Oh, tell us, pray, without delay, the girl that you adore, the girl that you have sworn to love, and bring both wealth and fame, your promised wife in hope and life. Oh, quick, let us know her name. In Saratoga Jenny dwells, go tell her quick," he says. And Carrie calls from Deer Glen's Falls, and Ann from Old Fort Ed. There's Mamie up there in Fort Ann, and Marnie in Whitehall. The young man sighed, "It's time I died, I vowed to wed them all." That's certainly a local song. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for coming. Yes.
Thanks for coming.
A pleasure.
We'll send you
thank
some things.
Yeah,
Tremendous
yeah,
project.
yeah. It's
Goodness for you.
it's been a lot of fun. Yeah.
It sure
So
has.
far, yeah. Yeah, I'm not great on self-promotion, so I wait until somebody like him comes along and asks.